Imagine waiting 2 weeks to know if you got a like or not, or a thumbs up. In the decades before the internet, people made comics, and we reached out to each other. What was it like? This is the Sequential Artists Workshop, and these are the 90s mini comics oral history archives. Come join us as we take a longer look at those analog days when communication was a lot slower, maybe more deliberate, maybe more reckless. Who knows? It was just different. Join us as we take a look and really notice how much things have changed. Come join us on the socials. Sometimes it's Comics Workshop, sometimes it's Saw Comics. Either way, come check us out and welcome.
Hi everyone, this is our next episode in our 90s era mini comics oral history archives. Today we have our guest.
Hi, how are you? My name is Chetan Patel. I'm based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Awesome. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with our interview. What are some comics publications that you created or were a part of in the pre-internet era?
I've done quite a few of them. I'll show you some samples. I started off doing mini comics. First one I did was a mini comic called My Hero, and it was our college thing, and photocopied it, printed it, sold them to local comic shops, clothing stores, music stores, any trendy shops that would carry my book. And this one, TikTok Tom, is the main one I did, and I did that for almost 2 years.
Awesome. All right. And what are some locations you worked out of during the 80s or 90s?
Mostly based in downtown Toronto now, and a suburb also. Well, mostly in the Toronto area.
Awesome. And how would you describe your comics work?
Ooh, that's a hard one because our comic has everything from, superheroes to non-superheroes to everyday life stories. So it's a range of everything.
Yeah.
And we don't have a genre, honestly. We have a mixture of everything.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, that'll bring us into our comics production. Can you tell us how many comics or how you made your comics, what tools you used, etc.?
Why not going back to the pre-internet ages? That's even pre-computer age for digital printing. So a lot of times I would, do artwork traditionally on paper, draw it out on paper, and decide on what size I'm printing it at. And the standard format was 8.5 by 11, folded in half and stapled. So what I would do is do the artwork on standard, 11 by 17 sheet that's proportional to the final size. Go to the photocopier, reduce the size, then take all of that back home, cut and paste and glue everything onto boards that I could take to the printer and have them printed and collate them.
Yeah, awesome. What kind of materials would you use? Like, were you a brush guy, pen, nibs?
Early on, it was everything. Mostly because at that time in the 90s, making me sound old now, at that time, a lot of nibs and a lot of brushes. And like technical pens and stuff were too expensive, and some of the marker pens weren't available at that time. So a lot of pen and ink work, mostly pen and ink and brush work.
Awesome. How would you ready your comics for print?
Oh, that was readying would be like making sure like in those days photocopiers were the quality wasn't great. So you had to make sure you had good reproduction of your copies of the original art. And when you reduce it, you might lose some quality in the printing. And some of the artwork came out better with the when you reduced it and stuff like that. And readying that work, it was a trial and error a lot of times.
Yeah. All right. And how would you print them? You said you used printers.
Printers, most of the time, because at that time, to be honest, my computer would, I didn't have a printer at that time because at that time laser printers were expensive. So what I would do is print the books print the art. Do the artwork on larger sheets, take them to the photocopier, reduce them, and mostly it was photocopying because that was more a cost efficient way of printing at that time. And one thing with the photocopying was it was reasonably priced, and you did not have any minimum print quantities.
Yeah, that's nice. Do you remember how many you printed of your first comic and maybe how that changed over time?
First comic, I sold it for 25 cents. So,
Mhm.
I lost money on it, but it was just to, give out my work everywhere and stuff. I think I printed like 400 copies
All right.
and selling them at the local stores and stuff. It'd be on consignment and yeah, hard to keep numbers. I honestly, I sold enough to keep me going.
Yeah. How many would you sell? Like how did that number like evolve like over time or into the age of the internet? How did that number change?
Over the internet, it's different because now, you know, in the old days, I could print like 300, let's say I print 300 copies. I could take them to the stores, or if I see people, I could sell them directly and keep track of what I sell and stuff. Internet wise now, problem of print, it's not even printing, it's all digital now. So it's, you could keep track of it, but it's not, to be honest, I would say selling wise, it is better now. But before, when I was younger, I could go around the stores and, you know, meet with, let's say, people like you and say, hey, here's my comic. Do you want to buy one?
Yeah.
And, with the internet, you can't do that. I would say sell wise, I think, to be honest, yeah, internet age is better
Mhm.
because you have more resources to, you could sell your, a digital copy to someone in, say, India or Australia, where when you do your self-publish zines, your only access is local area.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll bring us into our noticing and awareness section. Can you tell us when you first saw evidence of people making their own comics?
Oh, I used to go into a lot of yard stores and music shops and would see, you know, photocopied comics, photocopied music magazines, and going, oh, wow, these are interesting because, you know, at that age, I was interested, I read mainstream comics, I read mainstream things, but the alternative books always interested me. And,
Mhm.
someone like me, seeing someone, you know, a printed zine and going, hey, wow, they publish this. I could do this also. It
Yeah.
gave me, it opened my mind to say, you know what, I could do this. And mostly a lot of comics, to be honest, not a lot of comic shops sold zines, but a couple of local shops here, Big Island was one of them. Some of the music shops like Suspect Video and some of the used clothing stores used to sell a lot of them.
Yeah. Awesome. Can you tell us a story of getting a comic that maybe surprised or inspired you?
One I looked at was Optic Nerve. I
Mhm.
was at Big Island one time and the I can't, it was I don't remember if it was issue 4. It had the red cover on it,
Mhm.
and first time it caught my eye. Just seeing the cover caught my eye, and it just like looked inside, and the artwork just blew me away.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wow, this guy's doing this.
Awesome. All right. Did you ever read an issue of Fact Sheet 5?
I do remember that. Yes,
Uh,
yes, I do remember that.
yeah. Did you ever order a comic or write to anyone as a result of seeing it in Fact Sheet 5, Comics FX, or any other analog aggregator or review zine?
No, unfortunately, not. Most of my things were at that time were just going to the local shops and seeing what's around, and I bought almost anything that caught my eye and looked interesting. I bought it.
Yeah. All right. Did you ever advertise in anything, or was that also pretty hands-on in person?
It was hands-on in person, and good question you brought up because at that time, going to art college, what I did was I printed up posters and stickers, and I gave away posters to all my friends and said, "Can you paste them everywhere?" And I got weird reactions from people saying, "Hey, I saw your poster in the ladies' washroom at the club here." I'm like, then downtown, someone said, "Hey, your sticker's on the stop sign at this corner."
Hmm.
So, I pasted my the logo was it? I'll show you the issue 1 cover. This was our issue 1 cover,
Mhm.
and I made stickers of those and pasted them everywhere.
Yeah.
And we had I don't have a copy of it here, but our swimsuit issue, it's an alternative version of the swimsuit issue. And
Mhm.
everyone remembered that poster because we put that poster everywhere. And we put it in the local hip areas and stuff, record shops. We pasted them. What I would do is if I'm downtown or if I'm walking around, I always had stickers and posters on me. So
Yeah.
every time my friends and I walked by somewhere, we'd stick the stickers on.
Yeah.
And it was surprising how many people said, "Oh, you do that comic."
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great way of yeah, like getting your hands dirty, like getting active and putting your own work out there.
Well, because that was the only way we had because we
Yeah.
didn't have internet at that time.
Yeah. There weren't any forums to post to.
No, that's it. And you have to get the word out there, and it worked.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll bring us into our community section then. Can you tell us a story of how you met your closest friend or peer in comics?
All of it happened at the Ontario College of Art in Toronto. A bunch of us young college students in the first year. And what happened was that year I used to, just before I started college, I worked at a local comic shop. And then when I started college, one of them remembered me from the comic shop. And we started talking, and next thing you know, we're producing comics.
Yeah.
And he's one of my closest friends. We still work together on our comic now. It's not zines anymore. It's more, better printed quality, but we're still doing comics after all these years.
Awesome. That's great. How would this is kind of a tangential question to that then. How would you say that like going to an art school kind of impacted your experience in like creating comics and stuff like that? How that impacted community maybe?
Well, to be honest, the art school I went to, and I'm sure most art schools in the 90s were like that. Comics were a taboo. If you mentioned you did comics, you get weird looks.
Mhm.
And a lot of teachers and, in my portfolio, everything, no one talked about comics
Mhm.
until, we started realizing, hey, there's a small community of, people here who love comics. And we found out some of the teachers likes comics also. But, comics was uh comics was never taken as an art form.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great art form, but society hasn't accepted that.
Yeah.
And in art school first year, I stayed away from mentioning comics.
Hmm.
And then when I met a couple of people, we were like, oh yeah. Then next there's dozens of us who wanted to do our own books.
Yeah. I think that is notable. The tabooness of it probably made the community of it more tightly knit and smaller and
Yes, it did.
yeah.
It did, and we and we're still together, creating comics after all these years.
Yeah. All right. Well, can you tell us about maybe the first show or con situation where there were other people doing what you did?
We went to we were just talking about this recently. Dave Sim, who does Cerebus, had a independent comic convention called Spirits of Independence, and in the Canada area, our local area. Oh no, actually all over Canada. And the first one we did was in Kitchener, Ontario, and the second one we did was in Montreal. And there was a lot of alternative artists, no mainstream people, and it was great because you walk into the place and it's people like you doing self-published comics.
Yeah. Great. Did you feel more connected in those moments where you got to see groups of people that were interested in the same things you were?
Oh, definitely, because you know what, you could go to a regular convention and when you see mainstream comics and stuff like that, you know everyone wants to do a mainstream book, whatever, but when you see people like you who are just you know working a day job, at nighttime doing their own comics or on the side doing their comics and struggling to publish it, and trying to even sell one copy, and when you have other people excited, it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
and on both ends.
Yeah, that's great. Um, well, then talking about connection, can you tell us maybe when you felt the most or least connected to the community, or maybe both?
Most connected again was walking around, going to art stores, or even coffee shops and music stores, used music CD shops and stuff. When I would sell my comic, next person beside you would say, "Hey, what's this?" And you start talking about comics and stuff like that. Even art college, you run into people after a while and go, "Hey, you do comics, you make connections." Even at the Spirits of Independence convention, made a lot of connections. Now, the disconnection is sometimes you run into people. I've run into people where you talk about your comics, they have no interest in helping other people out.
Yeah.
You run into that type of thing. It's disappointing. I mean, we're trying to do our own thing, but you want to help everyone out also.
Yeah. All right. Who would you say were slash are your most significant peers in comics? Significant meaning most influential in you and your work.
Ooh, I would say artist wise, I would say Jamie Hewlett. It's just his. I remember a friend of mine from art school showed me issue of Tank Girl,
Mm-hmm.
the collected trade, and this was like 1992, 93. And no joke, he told me where he got it. It's a place called Toronto Women's Bookstore, and it was the only place in the city that had it. So
Mm-hmm.
went there, bought it, and fell in love with his art.
Yeah.
It's just his art style. I mean, I know he has more polished work now, but it's great. But his earlier work was amazing.
Yeah. I wonder if that is kind of an art school rite of passage of someone passing you a copy of Tank Girl, because I've had the same experience and I've met other artists who have had the same experience of having their minds blown by it.
Oh yeah. Then I went. As soon as I saw that, and I found out that Tank Girl was originally published in Deadline magazine,
Mm.
I went looking for Deadline magazine, and just all the artwork in that magazine blew my mind away.
Yeah.
But Jamie Hewlett was one of the early influences. And also Jamie Hernandez, two Jamies, that influenced me on my work.
Yeah. Great. So while you were in art school or maybe before or after then, your peers around you, did you ever do any collaborations or draw jams with them?
Oh, all the time, all the time. We were just talking about this recently. One of my buddies and I used about what, four or five of us, almost every once or twice a month, would get together at his place, so his one bedroom apartment, and a bunch of us would crowd around and doing comics jams for sometimes all night.
Yeah.
And we created a lot of things that honestly, if I show it to you, go, what the hell were you guys doing? And the funny thing was, we didn't drink or anything. The only thing we had to drink was juices and water, and that's it. But we had so much fun creating
Yeah.
random stories and everything.
Yeah. Awesome. How would you say that those peers and that community during that time affected your own work?
Oh, they helped me a lot because we threw ideas at each other, and my style is completely different from my friend Paul's or Tom's or my friend Alan at that time, or Chris or Patrick. Um, all of us had different styles and different influences, but looking at each other's work kind of, drove us to do our own thing. And we pushed each other.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, that'll bring us to our distribution section then. Can you tell us how you traded or sold your comics or speak a little more on that?
What I did was to sell it and distribution. I walked around to a lot of, every time I was about walking around in the city and stuff, in my bag, I always had a stack of comics. And one of the clothing stores I remember going to, there's an area in Toronto called Queen Street, a hip area, and it was a used clothing store. So I went in there and I just looking around, and they had clothing and CDs and books, used books. So I started talking to the person at the counter, and I told him, "Hey, I do this comic and stuff like that." And They go, oh yeah, cool. And I just said, would you want to sell it at your store? And the person said, yeah, sure, we'll sell it. And it was just, and same thing with the CD shops. I would go in there and say, hey, I do this comic. Would you be interested in selling my book? And surprising, a lot of them said yes.
That's
because
great.
they because they looked at it and it was something, one thing with the comics, with the zines and stuff, it falls into that category of people who'd like it.
Yeah. Awesome. Can you tell us about some of the other comics during that time that you remember?
One of my friends, Chris, did a book called Aha, I think it was called.
Mhm.
And what was it? Like I said, Optic Nerve, I've seen at the store. What was else? You know what? I have them in a box. I still have some of the zines I bought from there. When I was at Ontario College of Art, they had their own self-published comic also called Interesting to Your Mother. So a lot of good ones.
So, you mentioned some of these stores that supported you. Did you ever feel particularly connected to any particular stores or venues that you felt really supported you in your community?
There's a store called Big Island in Toronto. At that time, the owner of the store, Sean, every time I walked in there, he was super nice guy and everything, and he never said no to me to carry my book and stuff, because I used to come in there and spend hours and hours in this store looking at the zine section, alternative section stuff, and also we ended up talking and kind of became friends in the store. So every time I come in, say, hey, I have a new issue. Well, if I had a question, he would take it. And you know what? It's also building up, because my running joke was either I'm at the comic shop or at the coffee shop, and that was the two things. And that comic shop in the 90s was amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, they were like, they supported a lot. Unfortunately, at an older age now, I live in the suburbs. I don't get to go to that store that much anymore.
Yeah. But it still holds a good, special place in your heart.
Oh, it does. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Were you ever a part of any kind of distribution collective like Puppy Toss or submit to any small distributors like Phantom House or Spit and a Half?
No, to be honest, I wasn't aware of that at that time.
Yeah.
It was later I kind of realized a lot of this, but and again, trying to distribute, distribution wise, even for like mainstream distribution stuff, it's too much hassle at that, in the 90s. But just for the smaller ones, I wasn't aware of that at that time. And again, we didn't have the internet, so unless someone told you about it, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll bring us then to our wrap up section. What do you miss about that time?
Oh, honestly, I miss the thrill of, again, going to the walking around, trying to sell my books, showing off my books. But the main thing I miss is the production of it,
Mhm.
because digital age and computer age, everything's online. You do it, you scan it, put it in. I missed the time where you have to get your X-Acto out, cut the pages, use the glue stick to paste it,
Yeah.
any lettering, all hand pasted lettering. I miss that.
Yeah.
Same thing with, like, adding screen tones and things like that. It's the hands-on experience I miss.
Yeah. Is there anything you don't miss about that time?
A lot of times the production, printing the books, because it was trial and error, because photocopies were hit and miss, and you could never get the books lined up perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
It was you know no matter how much time you spent and how much layout you did, pages will always shift. And when you collated them and saddle stitch them, you'd never get the centering right.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't like about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, can you tell us one more memory or give us one more anecdote from that time?
um, I was surprised when I got a letter from a lady in Australia saying she got my comic. And first of all, I was thinking, how did you get it in Australia? And she wrote a letter saying, and lovely letters. I think I still have it somewhere, saying how much she liked our comic and everything. So my thinking is either someone sent her that comic from here or she came here and saw it and bought it. But she sent me a letter from Australia saying how she loved my comic.
Yeah. How did you feel when you saw how widespread your comic could be, or how many people it could touch?
Oh, that was a great feeling because, I'm one of those people when I see, let's say, if I see you and, you're interested in my comic, but, you know, you're not sure about it, I'll just give it to you and say, here, have a read, support me later on. And it's just a good feeling, very good feeling.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, can you tell us 3 people who we should contact for these archives?
Sorry.
Could you tell us 3 people that you can think of that we should contact for these archives?
Oh, for my comics, you mean?
For anyone who is doing work in mini comics or zines during the age before the internet.
One person who was doing mini comics is Chris Stewart,
Mhm.
and he was one of my colleagues. He helped out on TikTok, Tom also, and he's a perfect person. Tom Yo is another one. He does his own comics also, and helped out with me on my books also. And again, one of the mini comics which impressed me and stands out. I mean, he doesn't do any zines or anything, but Optic Narzadian Tomine, he's a great guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, this was great. Thank you. Thank you for, taking your time and listening to me about my zines and my mini comics.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. Where can our viewers find you if they want to see more of your work?
Look at it on our website, tiktoktom.com. And our books are available right now directly through me for the website or on Amazon.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That'll conclude our interview.
Thank you, and thank you for listening to me.
Thanks for joining us. This has been a production of the Sequential Artists Workshop, or SAW. You can find us on social media at Comics Workshop and online at sawcomics.org. You can hear about our many courses at learn.sawcomics.org. SAW is a nonprofit and supported by people like you. Learn how to make a tax-deductible donation at the donate page of sawcomics.org. You can join our free community of comics explorers at members.sawcomics.org. Thanks so much for being here.